I've been feeding Bigfoot for 40 years, not something that might be Bigfoot, not strange noises or blurry shapes. One individual, the same massive, hair-covered figure, was taking food from the same flat rock behind my house, year after year, winter after winter, watching me from the tree line with eyes that were far too knowing. For most of my life, that was just a secret I carried. A weird, private truth buried under power bills and grocery lists. But in the end, he showed me something in a hidden ravine that explained why his kind fears us. And once you see what I saw, you don't just go back to pretending it's all campfire stories and hoaxes. My name is Daniel Lawson. I'm 67. I live in north-central Pennsylvania on the edge of the Allegheny National Forest in a tired old farmhouse with 6 acres of sloping woods out back. I spent 35 years as a line technician, climbing poles and stringing cable through these hills. On paper, I'm nobody important, but off paper, I spent 4 decades feeding a Sasquatch. I call him Ash. It started in the fall of 1985. I was 28, newly married, and proud owner of a half-rotten farmhouse that my wife Laura swore had potential. The yard sloped into a forest that never really ended. She planted a little garden right where the yard gave way to trees. One October evening, I came home late from storm repairs. As soon as I stepped out of the truck, I smelled fresh dirt and something else. It smelled like wet hair, musk, and broken plants. "Some damned bear tore up the garden," Laura called from the porch. "I told you we needed a fence." We walked around back with a flashlight. The corn stalks were snapped, vines crushed, squash shredded. It absolutely looked like a bear raid, until I saw the tracks. Behind the garden, the soil stayed damp from the shade. In that soft ground, something had left big, clean footprints. Each print was long, 17, maybe 18 inches, and clearly shaped like a human foot. 5 toes, defined heel, no claws. The stride was enormous, around 6 feet between steps. "What is it?" Laura whispered, reading my face. "Probably a bear walking funny," I lied. "Mud can distort things." We both knew mud didn't distort things that perfectly. More prints led up the slope into thicker trees, where the flashlight beam seemed to just give up. The woods were unnaturally quiet, no crickets, no rustling, just our breathing and, far away, the faint sigh of the highway. That night, I lay in bed listening to every creak in the house. I kept seeing that print in my head, my hand next to it, looking like a child's. The rational part of me cycled through excuses. A prank, some weird boot, a misprint. But another part had already picked a label: Bigfoot. I made a plaster cast the next morning. It came out lumpy but clear enough. 5 toes, no claw tips, ridiculous size. I hid it in the basement like contraband. We patched the damage. We talked about putting up a fence. We pretended everything was normal. The feeding didn't start as feeding Bigfoot. It started as bird food. Laura loved putting bread and seeds on a flat rock at the tree line. Squirrels would come, chickadees, crows. It became a little ritual, her standing in the golden light, scattering crusts and talking to her birds. One day, she dumped some old mashed potatoes and chicken bones on the rock. In the morning, everything was gone. Not scattered, not pecked apart, just gone. The stone looked almost wiped clean. "Fox, maybe," she said. "Or raccoons?" "Raccoons leave a mess, but this was tidy. We tested it. We left bread one night, leftovers another. Every morning the rock was clear. No crumbs on the ground, no obvious tracks. Then it snowed. The first heavy storm came early that December. 6 inches overnight turned the yard white. I went out to shovel, glanced at the rock, and stopped cold. A clean trail came out of the forest, went straight to the rock, then back again. Each print was deep and crisp. 17-inch, 5-toed, human-shaped feet, walking on a 6-foot stride. "Dan?" Laura called from the porch. "Stay there," I said, my voice sounding thin in the cold. She came anyway. When she saw the tracks, she just slipped her arm through mine and squeezed. "This is not a bear," she said. "No," I said, "it's not." We both said the same thing next. We should stop feeding it. We managed 4 days. On the 5th night, at 2 in the morning, something screamed in the forest. It started low and rose into a long, rolling howl that rattled the window glass, then broke into a series of hollow, barking notes. It sounded frustrated, almost accusing. Laura clutched my arm. "It's looking for something," she whispered. "Or someone." The next morning, without discussing it, she carried a bag of apples to the rock and set them down. The apples were gone before noon. That was the start of the pattern that defined the rest of my life. Food on the rock, massive prints in snow or mud, and the sense that something out there knew our schedule. For a few years, that's all it was. We saw occasional shapes in the dusk that might have been a tall figure, might have been imagination. We heard calls in the distance, strange howls that made the hair on your neck stand up. The rock emptied like clockwork. Then, in 1992, cancer took Laura. Our world shrank to hospitals and plastic chairs, to scans and lab results and hushed conversations in hallways. In 6 months, she went from planting seedlings behind the house to lying in a bed too exhausted to talk. When she died, I went back to a house that felt both too big and too small. Everything in it felt wrong without her. I forgot to eat. I forgot to shave. Days blurred. But somehow, I didn't forget to carry food to that rock. Maybe it was a habit. Maybe it was my last thread to the routine we'd built together. Neighbors brought casseroles and pies. I couldn't face most of them. I'd take a plate, pick at it, then carry whatever I couldn't swallow out behind the house and set it on the rock. On one of those nights, I sat on the back steps with a blanket around my shoulders and half a bottle of whiskey at my feet. The house light behind me glowed weakly. The forest in front of me was just a mass of black. At some point, the usual background noise seemed to sink away. The night grew dense. Then I heard it. Slow, heavy steps in the leaves, coming from the left, not from the direction of the rock. I froze. A figure unglued itself from the shadows between two ash trees, taller than the trunks nearby. He stepped into a sliver of moonlight, and I finally saw him clearly. He was enormous, 7 feet at least, maybe more. Shoulders so wide they seemed to fill the space between the trees. His body was covered in dark, shaggy hair, longer around the head and shoulders, shorter over the chest and arms. The hair moved with him. It wasn't like a costume hanging loose. His face was the strangest part. He has a heavy brow ridge, a wide nose, and deep-set eyes. The lower half looked more human than ape, with lips that could clearly form expressions. His eyes were dark and aware. They didn't slide over me the way a deer's might. They locked and stayed, gauging. He stopped about 20 yards from the steps. We stared at each other. My body screamed to run, but grief had burned a lot of fear out of me. I felt hollowed out, empty. Without planning to, I slowly lifted my hand, palm facing him. Just a quiet, small gesture. "I see you." He went perfectly still, then raised his own hand. His palm looked thick but mostly bare, his fingers long and powerful. He held the gesture for a heartbeat, then dropped his arm, walked to the rock, picked up the bowl of stew I'd left, and turned away. At the tree line, he paused, his back to me. His head turned just enough that I saw his profile against the sky. Then he stepped into the darkness and vanished. I sat there until the first light grayed the horizon. Every second burned into my mind. In the morning, I wrote in a cheap spiral notebook. April 3rd, 1992. He came to the yard, we saw each other, he raised his hand back. I read that line now and still feel my heart hitch. After that night, he became more than a rumor with footprints. He didn't appear every time, but every couple of weeks, especially when the world was sleeping, he'd step far enough into the yard that I could see him. We kept a distance, 20 yards, sometimes more. He always had an escape route. He never took his eyes off the trees for long. He moved like something that had learned the hard way what happens when you get careless. I started talking to him. Not full-on confessions, though some nights it came close, mostly small pieces of my day. "New kid at the yard almost got himself killed today," I'd mutter. "Didn't lock out a line before climbing. You'd think they'd teach that before they hand out harnesses." He'd stand there, listening, sometimes making low, rumbling sounds. There were different tones, warning, curiosity, what I came to think of as amusement. I have no proof he understood my words, but he clearly understood something about my intent. The first time he left something for me, it was easy to miss. I'd set out some peaches that were going soft. He took them overnight. In the morning, the bowl was empty. In the center of the rock, though, sat a stone. Not just any stone. A smooth, river-rounded oval, dark gray with a white quartz streak. Our hillside is all rough shale. You don't find stones like that just lying around. I picked it up. It fit my hand perfectly. After that, little things started appearing occasionally after he took food. A perfect turkey feather, clean and unbroken. A length of vine twisted into a clumsy braid. A small stick stripped of bark and sharpened at one end. He wasn't just accepting offerings, he was making them. In my notebook, I stopped calling him it or the creature. I started calling him Ash, after the cluster of ash trees he usually appeared near. It felt wrong to keep interacting with someone, even someone non-human, and not give them a name in my mind. Decades slid by. I watched his hair gray slowly around the face and chest. I watched my own hair thin in the mirror. The world outside our little arrangement exploded with technology. Internet, smartphones, and trail cams. Bigfoot forums popped up, full of hoaxes and a few photos that looked too close to my woods for comfort. Through all of it, the pattern held. Food on the rock, a shadow at the edge of the yard, quiet exchanges in the dark. Then one day, he took me to where his fear was born. It was late October 2019. I'd left a pan of roasted potatoes and venison on the rock and settled onto the back steps with a blanket. He arrived earlier than usual, appearing between trees like he always did, scanning the yard, then the house, then the forest behind him. But instead of heading straight for the food, he looked at me, made a short, clipped series of sounds, and lifted one hand in a clear motion. From his chest, then out into the woods. Come. Every instinct in my body told me that following a 7-foot forest giant into the dark was a bad idea. But there was something in his posture, an urgency, a gravity I'd never seen. I grabbed a flashlight and followed. He moved more slowly than I knew he could, choosing paths even my old knees could manage. We climbed and descended through folds of land behind my property, the hum of the highway fading, the trees growing older and thicker. After a while, the sounds of the forest thinned. No insects, no small animal rustles, just the soft scrunch of our steps and my uneven breathing. We crested a low ridge, and he stopped. Below us was a shallow ravine, maybe 30 yards across, 10 to 15 deep. If you weren't looking for it, it would just seem like a dip in the land. Trees ringed its rim. The bottom was cluttered with leaves, moss, and shapes. I slid down the slope carefully, my boots skidding in the loose soil. Up close, the shapes resolved into metal and concrete. A rectangle of rusted bars lay half buried, forming the outline of something unmistakable, a cage, 10 feet long, maybe 6 wide. Heavy chain lay coiled nearby, one end encased in a cracked block of concrete. I swept my flashlight. More concrete pads appeared through the leaves, each with bolts or bent metal stubs sticking out. Some had the collapsed remains of wire mesh. Others were just empty rectangles. Shell casings glinted everywhere. Brass, dulled by time, scattered like seeds. I bent and picked one up. .308, a hunting round, or a round for anything else you decide to shoot at from a distance. Near one pad, something white and rectangular poked from the dirt. I brushed it off. It was a metal sign, bent nearly in half, the paint peeling but still legible in places. Biological Research Area, authorized personnel only. Below, faint and flaking, conducted under contract with... The rest was gone. At the bottom, a faded government seal. I turned slowly in place, my brain catching up to the evidence. They'd built cages here, serious cages. Not for deer, not for bears. You don't pour this much concrete and drag in this much steel for raccoons. Behind me, Ash descended into the ravine with a heavy, reluctant grace. He tapped his chest, then lowered his hand to about his own thigh. Younger. Him, smaller. Then he moved into the middle of one of the concrete pads and mimed gripping bars at his sides. His fingers flexed as if around something solid. He hunched, compressing his huge frame into the imagined space. After a moment, he rolled behind a mound of earth and debris, pressed himself against the ravine wall, and peered over the top, just the very top of his head and eyes showing. Hiding, watching. I could see it all now. Younger versions of him and others like him, tricked or trapped into these cages. Men with clipboards and tranquilizer guns. Maybe helicopters overhead. Tests, measurements, shots, notes, and eventually, bullets. He straightened up and looked at me. In his eyes, I saw the same pain I'd seen in people who'd come back from wars. He lifted his hand, spread all 5 fingers wide, then slowly folded them in, leaving fewer and fewer, many, then fewer, then almost none. "Your family," I said quietly. "Your people." He made a low, rough sound that needed no translation. I sank onto one of the cracked pads, feeling suddenly older than I'd ever felt in my life. "This is why you hide," I whispered. "Because when we find you, we do this." Not just rednecks with rifles dreaming of trophies. This had been organized, funded, approved. It had paperwork somewhere with polite phrases like specimen and subject and justification. He'd lived through it, survived gunshots, escaped. And after all that, he'd spent years cautiously approaching my porch instead of vanishing into some unreachable part of the world. He'd shown me this place because he wanted at least one of us to know the reason for his fear. Back home, I dug up what I could. Old county records mentioned a wildlife disease study in the early 80s with grants and contracts in a couple of fenced-off zones in the national forest. Local newspaper clippings talked about federal researchers studying chronic wasting disease in deer and warned hunters to respect closed areas. Then the paper trail just stopped. No closing report, no cleanup story, no accountability. The ravine was quietly left to rust and rot and sink under leaves while the rest of the world moved on. I thought about exposing it, bringing a reporter out, posting pictures online. For a week, my mind spun with variations of that plan. Every single version ended the same way. More people in those woods, some with cameras, some with guns, some with contracts. And somewhere, watching from just beyond their lights, a gray-muzzled giant who had already done his time in a cage. So I kept my mouth shut. Not because I wanted to protect whatever agency did this. To hell with them. But if I turned that ravine into a story, I'd turn this forest into a hunting ground all over again. Ash didn't bring me there for revenge. He brought me there so when I said, "They're afraid of us," I'd know exactly what that meant. After the ravine, he came less often. When he did appear, I noticed things I hadn't before. The stiffness in his left leg, the way he'd pause longer to listen when a car passed miles away, the deeper gray creeping through his fur. The last time I saw him clearly was in a snowstorm in January 2022. I carried out a pot of beef stew and set it on the rock, then stood on the steps a minute longer than usual. He stepped out from behind a maple, and for a second I thought the snow itself was playing tricks. He looked old. He walked to the rock, lifted the pot in both hands, and drank. When he was done, he put the pot down instead of carrying it away. Then he did something he'd never done in all the years I'd known him. He came closer, from 20 yards to 15, to 10, to maybe 8. Close enough that I could see individual hairs clumped with snow. Close enough that his breath plumed white in the air between us. He raised his hand and tapped his chest twice, fingers thumping against his sternum. Then he extended those fingers, palms slightly up, in my direction. Me, you. That's what it felt like anyway. Two beings on opposite sides of a lifetime of damage and fear, acknowledging each other plainly. My eyes burned. I mirrored the gesture with a shaking hand, tapping my own chest and lifting my palm. We stood like that for a few seconds while the snow fell, and the world felt smaller and bigger all at once. He let out a low, soft sound. Not anger. Not grief. Something like acceptance. Then he turned and walked back into the trees without looking back. I haven't seen him clearly since. Sometimes, after I put food out, it disappears in a way that tells me something careful took it. Or maybe I'm just a lonely old man reading too much into snow and shadows, but I still put food on that rock, just in case. So why do they fear us? They fear us because we taught them to. We built cages in a ravine and called it research. We shot bullets into ribs and wrote it up as data. We took living beings who think and remember and grieve, and we turned them into specimens. We do that a lot as a species. If something is rare, we mount it. If something is powerful, we try to control it. If something is mysterious, we put it behind bars and jab it with needles until its mystery is gone. Ash lived through that, and yet, for 40 years, he accepted food from a species that had shot him, trapped him, and killed his kin. He stood in my yard and mirrored my raised hand. He led me to the worst thing humans had done to him and let me stand there as a witness. He didn't ask me to fix it. He knew I couldn't. He just wanted one of us to know. So here I am telling you. I won't tell you exactly where that ravine is. I won't give coordinates or road names. If your first thought after hearing all this is, I should go find them, you miss the point. The point is, we don't have to touch everything we know exists. We don't have to prove everything with a body on a table. Sometimes the most decent thing we can do is accept that something is out there, that it thinks and feels and fears us for good reasons, and then stay the hell away from it.